views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Straight ahead on this edition of Perspectives, renowned fine artist, arts activist, curator, and producer Gwen Black joins me right here on the set of Perspectives. Stay tuned to hear about her over 30 years of experience in the arts and how she's used her work to uplift the community, as well as further the importance of arts in education. And she's coming up in just a few seconds. Stay with us right here on Perspectives.
What's on your mind?
Let 'em know.
What's on your mind? What's on your mind?
Let 'em know.
Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective with shines of light. Cause it might make a difference in someone else's life.
Make a difference.
What's your perspective?
Express what's in your heart and your mind. Share your perspective.
What's your perspective?
And hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Perspectives. I am Daren Jaime. Of course, we thank you for watching. Feel free to join us every week here on BronxNet Channel 67, also Verizon Files, that's Channel 33, or anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. And there you have the opportunity to find out about what is going on with Perspectives. We also invite you to stay connected to us on all of our social media platforms and also my professional page, Daren C. Jaime on Facebook. You can get connected, find out information as well as some inspiration. Well, coming up on this edition, since her entry into fine arts, my next guest has carved out a niche for herself as a talented artist, curator, educator, and an art supporter. And throughout her career, she's received many awards and recognitions for her art, community events, as well as her exhibitions. In 2015, she received a complimentary copy of President Obama's Arts and Humanities Month proclamation that's celebrated annually in October. And in addition, President Obama, during his first term in office, has graciously liked her visual arts and Jazz Fest NYC Facebook pages. So she's joining me now to tell a little bit about herself, her upcoming exhibits, and what she's got going on in her 30-year plus career. Ms. Gwen Black joins us here on the Set of Perspectives. An honor to have you.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you much. Good to have you. And so you're working a lot with the arts, and
Yes.
that's been your life.
It has been. Even as a youngster, it was just inspiration for me at a very, very early age. And I mean, maybe kindergarten. There was something about drawing and painting and colors. It inspired me. I loved it. And of course, my audience were my cousins. They were like, yeah, this is great. So it was just my path, my God-given path.
And for you, you know, I think I want to talk to most people who work in the arts, and they've been in there for a few minutes, who had a foundation. They talk about how education,
Yes.
with arts and education, well, I should say arts, growing up having arts. But nowadays in school, arts is music, sports, some of the first things on the budget cut list.
Right.
What did it mean for you?
Well, actually, I was fortunate at the time I was in high school to have the arts music program in place. And so for me, it just gave me more of a foundation to start developing my skills. But for kids today, the educators are missing the point that while you're inspiring kids to take those tests and pass those tests, they socially need to be prepared. And how do we prepare them socially? They have to know who they are. They have to know what their talents are. They have to know the world around them. And that's what the arts does. It connects us to each other, to the world around us, and it develops our character, you know, and our strengths.
Yeah. And for you, it's been life-changing?
It has been. It has been. As a young girl, and I'll say what age I was when I decided to come to New York City. I was very young, and I told my mom that I wanted to go to New York City. Actually, I wanted to be a fashion designer, but when I was ready to graduate from high school, I didn't have a strong portfolio. So my best friend, unfortunately, who passed at an early age, she took me to an interview at the Art Institute of Pittsburgh. And she recognized it wasn't for her. And I said, wow, fashion illustrator, what is that? You know, so I ended up attending the Art Institute of Pittsburgh, and she went to college in Rhode Island. So you never know who's going to take you along your journey in life, because it was changing for me, because I didn't get to start off as a fashion designer, but I learned what a fashion illustrator was. So I was able to use my art skills to draw the models and the clothes.
And you were able to parlay it into being a curator and doing all the great work that you're doing right now.
Yes.
I mean, in the intro, we talked a little bit about President Obama liking your work. I mean,
Right,
so
right.
what's that like for you, having your work out there and the President of the United States, like, giving you that stamp?
Well, actually, the way it happened was very interesting. I decided to make a comment about President Obama on Facebook. And I was a little upset that everyone's giving him a hard time and saying this and that. I said, wait a minute. You know, all of these problems are not his problems. Let him do his job. You know, give him an opportunity. Let him do his job. And so one day I just happened to look at my page, which is Arts and Jazz Fest New York City, and it said President, liked by President Obama. And I said, okay, someone's playing a joke with me. That was in 2009. And I just kind of dismissed it. And then I looked back, I said, well, I think this is real. And then it followed by a like by Stevie Wonder and Will Downing. I said, okay, somebody's watching this page, you know, but I think it was connected to the comment. But that really goes to show you how personable President Obama was. He's watching, or his people are watching, they're seeing what's happening in the community and connect to the people.
I want to talk a little bit about your art, your exhibitions, the things that you got going on, and share a little bit, because I think you got a great history, right?
Right.
And you put the work in. When you look back right now, staying right now, what would you consider being your most prized piece of work?
Oh boy, I would say there's two points in my career. When my father died, unfortunately my father was killed, it was really right at that moment that I really began to connect to jazz. There was something about jazz music that was my journey, you know. And my family was very involved in jazz in Pittsburgh. My uncle was best friends with Earl Garner. My cousin is Billy Strayhorn's nephew. And so living in Pittsburgh, we didn't want to hear jazz. We kept saying, no, that's for old people, you know. But it was that point when my father departed, I said, there was something that took me down that path, and it was one of my cousins who also just unfortunately passed, who was a saxophonist, Emmett Nelson. And he started taking me to the jazz clubs, and I kept meeting all of these wonderful, wonderful musicians like Justin Robinson and Rodney Kendrick and Lafayette Harris. You know, I started hearing the music, I started understanding the music, and it became life-changing for me. But I even before then, when I was still a student at FIT, we were sketching the models because we would sketch the models live. And the model had on a scarf, and it reminded me of a piano, piano keys. And that was my first piece of art relating to jazz music. It was a Cole Porter tune, and I cut out the music, and I put it around the model, and it just seemed like that was my path that God was leading me on. And so really connecting the music and now with the art today, it has changed a lot of things for me and artists too in the community, because our festival has given them a vehicle to show that connection between the visual arts and jazz, and us to show our work to the public at large.
Stay with us, got more coming up. We want you to stay with us. Gwen Black, our guest here in studio. Have more coming up. We'll be right back in a few. Back here on Perspectives, our guest in studio, Gwen Black, and sharing a little bit about your work. And before the break, we were talking about, you talked about two of your major milestones. And,
Right.
and number two, we didn't talk about Charlie Parker.
Right, Charlie Parker. I created this piece on Charlie Parker back in 1991. And from that point to this point, it's still one of my signature pieces. You know, I have shown that piece to children, and they look at it, and they say, "Wow, that's awesome!" And that's what I wanted. I used charcoal, really, really dark charcoal with colors, and I wanted people to understand that Charlie Parker was an intellect. You know, I know a film was done on him, but there's just really some important factors that were missing from that film. And so I want people, when you look at my artwork, who is Charlie Parker? Who is Dizzy Gillespie? You know, and the music is coming out of their minds, and it's coming around the paper in rhythm. And that was a changing factor for me, because I think it was the second piece of art I created dedicated to jazz. Yeah.
And it meant a lot there, huh?
Right, it meant a lot.
Talk to us. You got an exhibition coming up in January, and it's Randy Weston.
Oh yes, now Randy Weston, just an angel, beloved around the world. And Randy Weston, I connected with him over 20-something years ago. We did a dedication to Duke Ellington at Walter Reed Theater, which is at Jazz at Lincoln Center. So I called Mr. Weston, and I met with him. I said, "This is what we're doing." He said, "Tell me the time and the place."
I'm there.
So that was the start of the friendship. And he was that type of person. And even though he's globally known, highly regarded, he stayed connected to the community. And for 20 plus years, he was connected to Arts and Jazz Fest New York City. And I always told Randy, "Randy, I'm gonna do a portrait of you." And every time we're doing an event or something going on and we're celebrating him, you know, you just don't have time to sit down and do the portrait. So he passed away. And so this year we decided to celebrate him back in June 15th. We did the musical celebration. So Randy Weston, the man, and his music is an exhibition, and it wonderful array of photographs and artwork dedicated to him. And it's just looking at all of the photographs in the exhibition, and smiles and beauty and culture, and that was Randy. And so I'm really happy that, you know, we didn't get to do a radio interview with him last year, which was our goal. And well, actually the year before, it was our goal, 2018, but we were not able to do that. So last year, 2019, we were able to have this celebration June 15th, and then in December we continued on with the exhibition that's now on exhibit at the Stuyvesant Mansion in Brooklyn.
That's awesome.
So,
And
yes.
talk to us about how long did it take you to put the exhibition together?
Yeah, well, we actually really started in June. We sort of did a mini exhibition at the Riverbank Park alongside the musical performance, which consisted of his band, Neil Clark, TK Blue, Alex Blake, and a few other musicians. So it sort of was kind of like in place, but then it took several months to really pull it together, because then you have to call the artists, you have to get all the artists together, you got to find the space. So we were actually looking at another space in Brooklyn, which ultimately didn't become available. And so it's always good to have networks of people.
Yes.
And so Larry Weeks and Charlotte Keys with the Fulton Arts Fair, which is one of the oldest arts organizations dedicated to Black art in Brooklyn. They said, "Gwen, we have a space at the Stuyvesant Mansion," which is another historic point. And so it began to unfold. And I began to call them the photographers, I began to call the visual artists. This is the exhibition, this is the time frame. It actually opened December 16th. And it's extended until January 19th of this year. So it's a little over a month.
Right.
A little over a month.
January 18th from 2 to 5:30. You're invited, and there's also a panel discussion and artist talk.
Yes, yes. So that's going to be exciting because now the public can hear uh, friends, colleagues, family speak about Randy Weston, the man, and his music. You can Google Randy, and you will see just
How
so
extensive.
much, right, how extensive his background is. But when you sometimes hear it firsthand from some of the people who worked with him, his family, his daughter, Kim Weston Moran, we will have, she's going to moderate the first panel, the musical panel. And then we have T.S. Monk, who is the son of the legendary Thelonious Monk. He will be there. T.K. Blue played with Randy since he was a young man. He will be on the panel, along with some other musical friends. And then the second part will be the artist talk, where we, the artists, will share with our audience our work, what inspires us, why we do what we do as creators, and what Randy Weston meant to us.
That's awesome. And so when you talk about the importance of arts, jazz, to us as a community, spending as many years as you've been in the business, right? What do you deem is that importance? I mean, what is the takeaway that you feel amongst the fact that, you know, we've got this arts and we've got jazz, and it's a huge part of our culture.
It is, and a very, very important part of our culture, because jazz came at a time where we were still dealing with segregation, systematic racism, but here, through the culture, and even going all the way back to the Harlem Renaissance, which started off as the New Negro movement, and then later became as the Harlem Renaissance, it was about taking on a new attitude, a new look at who we were. And then here you had jazz in the roaring 20s. But jazz really goes all the way back to the spirituals. And we can't really let history forget that. That was the beginning. And then, as Randy shared with us and taught us, those African rhythms came over on those ships with our ancestors. So that part of our culture and music is very important because musicians began to play together, white and black, and then but also we got to share music that showed our intellect, where they were showing images of us as being this type of way, but our music and our culture really shows a different side and says, no, that's not who we are. You know, this is who we are. We're mathematicians, we're teachers, we're intellects, and we can create music. So it's important to continue the legacy of jazz.
Yeah. Talking more with Gwen Black. Gotta take a quick break, get the final thoughts, final segment coming up right after this. Back here on Perspectives, our guest in studio, Gwen Black, and she's sharing a little bit about her work, and not a little bit, but a lot. Her work is extensive for many years as a curator and working. And as we talk about projects, you got the Randy Weston, but 2020 is here. What else do we have around the corner?
Well, I'm excited to share that we will be celebrating 17 years for the Arts and Jazz Fest New York City Festival. And this marks my 32nd year of advocating for the visual side of jazz. So my goal is to stay focused on the festival, to continue to build a team. So, you know, next year, the year after next, the year after next, we will continue to grow because it's important as artists for us to do our art, but it's also important to lay foundations. Whether you start an arts organization, whether you produce a festival, whether you find your niche, but because it's a legacy that we leave, you know, long after we're gone. You know, our artwork will be here, but I've always felt that it was my duty, God-given duty, to uplift the community through the arts. So that's why it's important for me that my festival will continue long after I'm gone. We're going to restructure our arts organization, which is Incorporation of Artists on the Move. Those are my passions. And this year, the festival will take place in June, July, August. And we are reaching out to some potential partners, perhaps with the Governor's Island board, to try to do an event. That's my highlight this year, that we present some art and music over at Governor's Island, because it's just a beautiful
place,
space.
yes.
And when I went to visit several years ago, I said, where have I been all 30-something years I've been in New York? And it's just awesome.
Yeah.
So that's going to be our highlight this year.
And for people who are thinking about this, I mean, you got young people out there who watch and say, this is something I want to do, right? What advice do you give? Because in order to have longevity, you're doing something right. So,
Yeah.
so let us know, what is it?
Well, first of all, you have to be determined. You got to have the passion for whatever it is that you're doing. And network. I can't say it enough. Come into the arts, whether it's photography, whether it's the visual arts, whether it's theater, whether it is filmmaking, and get a mentor. Get a mentor that will help you set some goals and see what will work for you, what won't work for you, and volunteer. It's very important to volunteer. Early on in my career, when I was working in the fashion industry, I told the designer, my boss, I said, I'm quitting, I'm leaving. She said, really? Because it was at that moment I felt that this is where God wanted me to go. And so that's when I moved over to the fine arts area, as opposed to commercial, because fashion art is still commercial art, and then you have fine arts, it's really more painting, that kind of thing. And so I volunteered. I volunteered at various organizations, so I had an understanding of how do I structure, you know, a company. I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, love working for myself. Sometimes I just want to sit in the studio and create, but we all got to work. So for any young person, volunteer. It's very, very important, and find a mentor.
What brings you the greatest joy in what you do?
Knowing that others find joy in who they are, that they can find their passion. Sometimes people will say, I can't even draw a straight line. I said, can you cut? Can you paste? Can you glue? You could do a piece of art, you know. And now with paint and sips, it has made it's really broadened the arena for people to feel comfortable to come and do art. So when I see some of the young people I work with young people that have disabilities, without disabilities. I've worked with seniors, and the smile on their face, that's joy. You know, it's good to be an artist and create and you get your accolades, but then when you share with someone else and give them some inspiration, to me that's more long-lasting. Because I always share that God has given us a talent, but what we do with our talent is our gift back to Him. So I love sharing.
Well, share with us before we go, how do people get in contact with you if they want to?
Please email me at gwenblackarts@yahoo.com. fineart.com. Our websites will be back up, but they can also visit my art at www.fineartamerica.com and search for Gwendolyn Black.
Well, thank you for coming and sharing. Honor having you.
It was a pleasure.
Good. Thank you so much, Gwen Black here, our guest in the studio. And as always, we invite you to stay connected to us, stay connected to her. She gave you the information. The information was located at the bottom of the screen throughout the course of the show as well. Take advantage of it. As she said, also get a mentor, get somebody that you can get connected to that can help you to get to where you need to be. Well, that's about it, I should say, for our edition of Perspectives. I am Daren Jaime saying thank you for all of us here on the Center of Perspectives. Take care. God bless. Share your perspective with somebody else you just don't know. It might make a difference in somebody else's life.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
What's on your mind?
Let 'em know.
Express what's on your mind. What's on your mind?
Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions, cause in the long